Hi there, this is Philip from Beyond the Tabletop, and in this video I'm doing an unboxing video for Forgeworld's Marauder Bomber. As you can see, it's not actually in a box. It comes in one of their more old school style plastic bags, which you can see just the top of here, and here's the label with it saying it's a Marauder Bomber. Now this is a huge bag. I can't even get it to fit all in the frame of the camera, so apologies about that. But what I'll do is I'll break it open now and go through all the parts individually, just so you can see what it looks like. If you're interested in seeing how I construct the bomber, please do follow the channel, as I'll be doing a follow-up video. While I'll be doing the build, this kit won't be for me in the end. It's actually a commission project and the first of its kind that I'll be doing. So that's incredibly exciting stuff. So let's get on with the unboxing. This is the first of many bags. Let's open it up and see what's inside. So we've got the usual quality seal and just showing who it's been checked by. So then we've got the instructions. We've got the components list on the left hand side. So there are 43 parts. That's obviously unique parts, not excluding all the things that are duplicated. And then on the right hand side we've got the start of the instructions. Now my Gorgon was at least 4 pages I believe of instructions. This is just as big if not bigger and only comes on 2 pages of instructions, so this will be quite an interesting build, trying to work out how it all fits together. Now I'm a big fan of this design, not so much for Marauder Destroyer, but what's interesting with this commission is that I'll actually be converting this into a Marauder Destroyer, just swapping out the weapons to match those of the Destroyer. With those instructions out of the way, we can now look at the parts that were in that bag. So let's start off. We've got the standard flying stand and this small perspex sheet. Now this is something I noticed with the Arvus lighter when I bought that. That's due to the cockpits here. The canopies themselves are just cast in regular resin, unlike some of the newer kits like the Avenger Fighter, which are cast in clear resin with an actual canopy window. Now these don't have anything here, and these shims here I'll just have to cut out, and this perspex here I'll have to carefully cut out for each window and create that canopy. Now that's something I'm surprised that with these kits they haven't updated, because that would be quite nice. Although what I found with the resin canopies is that it's sometimes a bit thick, and on my Avenger at least it was quite cloudy. So once that canopy was on you couldn't see the detail inside as much, whereas with this it will look really good. And if we just carry on with the canopy, you can see what it looks like here. And on the underside you can see obviously there's no detail here because this cockpit isn't something that is ever meant to be open. Then we've got these huge 4 engines, which are pretty massive blocks. They're really well cast up and have lots of detail, such as those little hatches, the piping, and obviously you've got the turbines themselves. Those 4 engines all look absolutely identical. Then we've got the cockpit. If we just look here you can see all of that display detail. These 6 squares at the top will be extra screens once they're painted up. And you can even see a purity seal just tucked in on the left hand side. Then we've got a second part of the cockpit with more flight controls. You can see something just here which looks a little bit like a grenade. Actually looks quite similar to some of the handheld flamer canisters from Forgeworld for its size, and due to that little nozzle I'm guessing it's an emergency fire extinguisher, which obviously will be quite handy for these guys. And then you can just see all the little panels and more of those controls. And then lastly we've got what looks like the Bombay door hatch, which will be at the very bottom, and then 2 of the air flaps. And as I've already mentioned, we've got the standard style flying base. In terms of the weight of the model, it's going to be quite large, so I need to make sure that the flying stand will be suitable. If not, I'll have to swap it out for a perspex rod, which might be a bit more secure. Then we've got the next bag. Now these look like the next sort of largest pieces other than the wings, so let's crack this open and have a look. In this bag it looks like we've got the front and tail parts, specifically to do with the 2 gunner sections. So we've obviously got these little 2 cockpit areas for the front and the back. These actually look like they're identical, and again I'm going to have to use that perspex just to mount on some windows. Now the front gun has the 2 las guns, which you can see just here, and I believe this is going to mount onto here, which is obviously where the 2 guns go. And then we've got the gunner's seat in the middle. So we've got 2 of these seats and we've got 2 of these gunner models. Let's just show you this guy up close. You can see this guy, it looks like he's wearing a lot of heavy carapace armour, which makes sense because he's in quite a fragile part of the plane and likely to get hit by stray shots. And you can see him holding that kind of dual stick, which has a little dial on it just there. He's got a targeter bionic for his eye as well as his breathing apparatus. And then you've got a skull on that shoulder pad. And then there's no detail here because that's going to be where the seat is. So that's quite a cool model. The second one looks exactly the same. They look a little bit odd from the side, but I think that's just because the seat's missing, so there's no context for his shape. We've got this rather large section just here, which I believe is the nose, which is going to mount the gun section. So you can see there's a little pivot section here, which will go on with that ball. You've got the Aquila at the very front. And then quite interestingly, at the back they've added in a hatch detail just so you can see where he's meant to pass through, but they've obviously not added it in here. So it'd be interesting to see if this bit of the model is actually visible once it's built. Maybe it's designed in such a way that the nose can come off and you can see some of the interior detail of the plane. That would be interesting to see. This is the tail part, which has that gunner section in as well. Now interestingly, underneath you've got a little hatch. Now I don't know if this is just a compartment for components and for repairing, or if that's an actual hatch to get into the gunner section at the tail, rather than going through the plane. So that would be quite interesting to see how that all ties together once this section's built. Then we've got 2 of these balls, which is clearly the pivoting section of that gun. And then if we look on the other side, you can see all of that interior detail, which will be the back of the gunner section. Now I do wonder if these 2 squares at the back, if they're meant to be display screens that need painting. I'm not entirely sure what they would be otherwise. Then there's a second one of those which looks exactly the same. Now this one here has quite a large mould slip just here, but also I don't think it will be that visible because it will be going into the back like this. Any bits that will be visible I can just clean up quite easily. You've got a few heavy bolters, one has come off the sprue, so this is the tail gun. I have to just drill out these ports just on the side. So sensibly, rather than making 2 absolutely identicals, they've got it so the ejector ports for each of the bolters go on the outside of the gun when they're together, rather than both being on the right hand side, which would then be hitting the other one as it comes out. So it's interesting that they've designed them to be mirrored, which actually makes sense, so well done for them for doing that. Then it looks like we've got a targeter component, which is obviously going to be with one of those rear or forward guns. Then we've got a couple of lights. Then we've got this piece here, which I believe is to do with the tail. We've got the fin just here, with the Aquila emblazoned on it, which is really nice. And then we've got to the top part of the fin. Now this actually sits on top. So here you can get a bit of a better idea of how that tail is going to look. And you can also see some tiny detail here, such as lights, which I'll have to paint up in a suitable colour. So that's another bag down. Let's put this away and get on with the next one. And then this is the last of the miniature bags, and this contains all the smaller components. So let's dig these out and have a look through them. So it was a bit of a squeeze to fit all of this one on. So you can see here you've got the 4 engines, you've got these 2 parts just here which I'm not 100% sure what they are. You've got landing gear and the feet, the 2 pilots, some interesting gubbins, some engine detail and some targeters, and then you've got the top gun and the side hatches. So I'll have a quick look through at all of these components individually. There's 4 of these, they're the rear part to the engine, which they look really nice. So they're pretty good. Then I've got these 2 parts here, and I'm not 100% sure what they are. I can't actually see these visible in the instructions anywhere from having a cursory look. Now there are only 2 of them, and they do seem to have a pivot in them, so I'm assuming they're to do with the front and rear gunner compartments. So then we've got a bunch of landing gear. Now you can ignore these parts here because they're all the gates. It's just really this internal section just here. So there's 2 of these. These look like they're the landing feet, which will go at the front. And then there's a much smaller one for the tail. And as you can see here, if I get one of the skids, You can see these will just sit in like so. Interestingly, that there's no detail on the bottom, unless of course there's some extra detail that either sticks on or there's a different compartment for when you have the landing gear in the retracted state. Then we've got the two guys that go in the cockpit. Now this one on the right is clearly the pilot. Let's have a look at the pilot up close. I'm guessing this guy is the bomber, and this is the only standalone seat, so I'm guessing it's for him. So you can see that here just sit in like so. This part is to do with a flying stand, so this is going to get glued into the bottom of the bomber, and then the flying stand can slot in. As I said earlier, what I might do is drill out a larger hole suitable for a perspex rod to go in its place. Now we're getting on to some of the gubbins. So we've got what looks like an external ladder maybe, and a targeting array. Then we've got two more lenses, which will probably be for the front and rear guns. Now these aren't identical, so they will be specific to the front or rear of the plane. Then we've got two more exhaust ports. Now these are mirrored, so there will be one for the left wing and the right wing. And then what looks like another tiny set of lenses or targeters. We've got the two hatches which go either side of the cockpit. It will be interesting to see if you can have these open and if there be any interior detail that will be visible. And then the last section that we've got is all to do with the top gun, which has a heavy bolters. Then we've got the top piece for the heavy bolter. And again, I'm going to have to use that perspex sheet to cut out all of these windows individually. Now there's quite a lot of frames that one small piece of perspex needs to cover, so I'm going to have to be very careful cutting that out. Obviously these two pieces here won't need it because that's where the gun comes through. Now we've got another set of heavy bolters. These look exactly the same to the ones on the tail. Then we've got the gunner himself, along with two mountings for the heavy bolters, which will just sit either side. And then it looks like he will drop in here, and then the canopy will go on top. Now I'm guessing by this detail here that this will actually just mount on top, and you can sort of see on the inside how that might happen. And then lastly, we've got two packages that are wrapped up in bubble wrap, so let's just see what's inside. So in this one we've got two wings, so you can see the detail here with some exhausts, some cabling, lots of riveting, and on the underside you've only got detail up to here, because this section is going to be reserved for those jet engines. And then the other one is a mirror image. So you can see the wingspan of just one wing is just around 7 inches. And then you can see going back that it's just under 5 inches. And then the last parts are the fuselage of the plane. This one looks like it's going to be the top half, because that's going to be the top gunner. As you can see, there's nothing on the inside. Interestingly, it's got one of the new style GW stamps which go on the gates. Now this is something they've only been doing the last few years, so that implies they've probably redone the mould. And looking through all the pieces, there seems to be very little in the way of mould slips and air bubbles, so that is probably correct because all the pieces seem to be of really good quality. And then for the last piece, you've got the underside of the fuselage. Now this is pretty large. You can see that you've got the bomber hatch door here. That's most likely where the flying stand is going to be. And then you've got these 3 indents here. That's going to be for the landing gear. Now you can see some detail on the side. That's going to be the front, where there's the air vents. You can see a tiny amount of internal detail just in terms of flooring, and I believe this is where the 2 door hatches go. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like once it's all put together. And then down on the tail section, you've just got the detailing on the bottom, and in terms of size, it's 6 inches to sort of about there. So you're almost at 11 inches in length in total. So this is quite a big piece. There's one slight update on the video. When I was talking about the 3 frames for the front, the middle and the tail guns, they all appeared the same. Now when I was actually doing the build, what I noticed that the middle one that I was given is actually incorrect, because it's the exact same one as the front and the tail, but actually it isn't, and this isn't compatible with the kit. So I spoke to Forgeworld and they did their usual great service of sending out a replacement part straight away, and in a few days I got the replacement. So here is the correct frame for that top heavy bolter gun. You can see here that there are 2 plastic shims just here. I need to cut those out because that's where the heavy bolters are going, and then again I need to cut out the shim here in the middle, which is part of the window frame. If I just show them side by side, you could see why it would be an easy mistake to mix them up, because they do look a little bit similar, but they are very different indeed, and even in fact slightly different in size. So if you do get this kit, just make sure that you've gone through all the parts to make sure that they're correct and that you don't have the same mix up that I did. And that brings us to the end of the unboxing video. I hope you've enjoyed it and had a little sneak peek in terms of what this kit looks like up close if you haven't been able to see one for yourself. I hope you've been able to get a sense of what this kit is like in terms of its detail and its size, as well as the quality of the castings, which in my mind is really high. I'll also do a couple more videos in terms of how I build and paint it up. If you're interested in other conversion projects, painting tutorials or building guides, make sure you subscribe and click the bell notification for future updates. That's all for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, take care.